35-second first mile that these runners put in. What the runners go through at this point is they're asking themselves, am I going out too fast? How do I feel? Which direction is the wind coming from, and should I maybe tuck behind the runner in front of me? Should I move up on somebody's shoulder? How do these other runners around me feel and sound? Are they breathing very heavily? Am I breathing more heavily than they are? Should I be moving up here at this part of the race? Do I like the flat stretches? Am I moving fast enough through them? And should I ease off on the hills because maybe the first one or two took more out of them than they would have liked? You must be careful at these phases of the race not to get into oxygen debt on some of these very sharp and in some cases fairly long hills that these runners are going to have to encounter today. Another difficult thing for these runners to cope with that you don't run into in indoor or outdoor track is the fact that these runners don't know each other well. Other than competing in their regional championships, nobody knows whether a runner from Occidental or from California School will run well against possibly Bethany College in the South. Nobody knows what dark horse may emerge. Mark Wally, we saw it run very well and win the Midwest Championship, which is considered by most people to be the toughest division here among the 7 regions represented. And so just past the 2 miles, which Mark Lesnar from Luther College reached in 9 minutes and 41 seconds over this soggy course, he's leading number 2 in second place, trailing him all the way so far, Paul Mosling, and in third place, having just merged up with the leaders, one of the co-favorites today, Jeff Milliman from North Central. We'll be back with more NCAA Championship Cross Country on ESPN in just a moment. Here at the 2.8 mile mark at the top of this steep rise, we have a new leader in Larry Deeney from St. Thomas College. Deeney, about 1 step in front of Jeff Milliman from North Central, has just completed one of the toughest hills in the course. Runners generally like to ease off on their pace after they reach a hill like this to let their body recover from the oxygen debt that they put themselves through trying to negotiate such a steep incline. Your muscles are sore, you're gasping for air, and you simply try and clear your head for the next 100 yards, then pick up the pace.
Loosen up the arms. Lower the arms. Come on. Come on, Don. Come on.
We've just passed the 3 mile mark and we have a new leader. Jeff Milliman has emerged from the shadows of the previous leaders here, Paul Mosling and Mark Lesnar, to take over the lead in this race, running close to his hometown of Camden, New York. He grew up 120 miles outside of Rochester, and he's back kind of for a reunion. His wife and his young son, Jeremiah, came by train from Illinois, Naperville to be exact, to be by his side for this race today. So this event means something special to him. He's got family and relatives that have been down here cheering him on in the early phases of the race. Jeff Milliman, our new leader, his time by the 3 mile mark, 14 minutes and 48 seconds through 3 miles. Fine time on this course. Keep in mind this is a rugged course. The terrain is soft. The footing has been soggy for some runners, and they were fearful of actually getting hurt on some of the downhill sections of this race. You'll be able to see some of the sections we're talking about here as we're referring to some of the mud, some of the difficult conditions that they're facing. This is an interesting sport, cross country, in that it also brings out steeplechasers running against milers, 6-milers taking on marathoners, marathoners running against individual milers. And the fact that this terrain here is so undulating and has such steep hills cranks in a factor of which you never get on a flat 5,000-meter race where one runner faces another. Surging. Different tactics become very important. People who can run both uphill and downhill phases actually have a benefit. Some runners can't run downhill well. You'll notice some of the mud in the surfaces. This is not the type of a bath that these runners particularly had in mind. And it probably brings to mind something, to my mind, I should mention here, this sport, more than any other I've ever seen, brings out a primitiveness in us. It brings out a desire to run free of the pack and also to forge a lead. And when you train 120 miles a week and you're out in such a beautiful setting like this, you desire to be free of the other competitors. And that's one reason why in virtually all distance races, runners desire to try and get to the finish line not only as fast as they can, but it shows in the way the individual miles are run past. For example, 4 minutes and 45 seconds for the first mile, about a 5-minute pace for the second, and slightly slower, 5:08 for the third. Fatigue sets in, and the body slows down. Here at 4 1/4 miles, it's Jeff Milliman hurdling himself down this hill with less than 3/4 of a mile to go. The mile markers between the third and the fourth mile have taken their toll on these runners, as the steepest part of the courses contain those particular hills that have been most troublesome. These runners average somewhere around 5 minutes and 40 seconds for that mile, even the leaders. And they're going to try and make up some of that distance with only one major hill here in the last 3/4 of a mile to contend with. The runners themselves, always in races like this, particularly on this type of a course, have something to think about. You're trying to cope with the hills. You're trying not to go too fast if you're not a good downhill runner on the other side. You're trying to cope with recovery. You're constantly having to watch your footing. Some of the runners said that they were afraid of falling on a couple of these hills down the hill. They were so steep. But this is what you're going to have to contend with now. You think of virtually everything inspirational that you can in the last 3/4 of a mile. It might have been your high school coach. It might be winning this for your team and your teammates. It might be saying, I'm a senior, and I've never, ever won a title, and I hope that we can place among the top 2 or 3. Whatever inspires you, you bring to mind at this juncture of the race. You've marshaled all your resources. You hope that you haven't overtrained for the event, which is a common malady that can face cross-country runners who put in up to 120 miles a week of training. And it's Macallister's College Paul Mosling who's taken the lead. Mosling beat Milliman last year, finishing third. He's got less than 350 yards to go. He forged past Milliman prior to the hill and has been trying to pick up the pace and pull away from Milliman.